Learning how to draw small and intricate creatures like insects provides you with such a unique drawing opportunity and challenge, as it requires you to really pay attention to the finer details. And in this particular video, we will be learning how to draw a very unique insect, and that is the dragonfly. Now, dragonflies are beautiful and really visually versatile creatures because they can be utilized in so many different artworks, but other than that, it is such a great drawing opportunity to practice your drawing skills, your shading ability, and understanding some unique structures that are very specific to the dragonfly. With that being said, hey guys, my name is Matt. Welcome to another video by artincontext.org, where we explore various art related topics, and in today's tutorial we will be learning how to draw a dragonfly. So with that being said, let's get into it. Now, the way in which we start is we begin by sketching the body. So we can begin by drawing a simple vertical line down the page using our pencil and a ruler. We want to make a simple line through the page which will help us to draw a symmetrical dragonfly body. Now, dragonflies are super symmetrical, but we don't necessarily need to worry too much about guidelines. However, using a vertical line is enough to kind of help us navigate how to structure the symmetrical aspects of the dragonfly. From here, we can begin to draw the head and the body of the dragonfly. A good suggestion is to get an image from the internet as a reference. However, it is not necessary for this particular tutorial. As we proceed, the head and the body of the thorax could be described as a bean shape connected to two circles. So the circle could be the eyes, and the bean shape would be the body or the thorax of the dragonfly. Now, the most important aspect to remember is keeping symmetry throughout the shape and the form of the dragonfly. So this means as we continue, the shape should be the same on either side of that vertical line. So we're really trying to use that vertical line to guide our process of creating symmetry within our dragonfly body. We want to make sure that we draw two even circles for the eyes, and the body would be like a bean shape that is even on either side of the vertical line. Now, the intention is to just take our time, slowly working our way down to the bottom section of the dragonfly drawing and making sure that we are using that vertical line to assist us in that process of keeping symmetry. So as we kind of move through the body, we can kind of use that vertical line to kind of navigate how large each side of various features should be. Now, the thorax will flow into the narrow cerci of the dragonfly. So the cerci are like the long tail parts of the dragonfly, and its shape is like a thin stick. So this thin stick-like structure will have subtle bumps and curves, which should be as symmetrical once again as possible on either side of the vertical line. Dragonflies could be also seen as a totem pole type of structure that have patterns on their cerci, or otherwise known as tail. Again, use a reference image to see how you can draw these various patterns, but in the process of looking at various reference images of different types of dragonflies can also give you kind of a good insight in terms of how you can play around and kind of change and make your own unique patterns in your own dragonfly drawing. The main aspect to remember is keeping it symmetrical. However, this is the most important thing, which will result in a more realistic effect as long as you remain or keep this quality within your dragonfly's body structure. Lastly, the bottom of the cerci has two horns that kind of point downwards, so this is the last smaller detail near the lower section of the body that we really want to capture. Now we're going to move on to sketching the legs. We want to carry on using our pencils, where we will now proceed to draw the legs of the dragonfly. The first two legs will sprout from the eyes and will have a subtle arc shape. The legs should be symmetrical on each side once again of our dragonfly. The second pair of legs will follow suit and be formed in the same shape as the first pair, except they will sprout from the side of the thorax. So we really want to keep this kind of parallel movement between the first pair and the second pair of legs. The bottom legs will then point in a downward and perpendicular position, sprouting from the bottom of the thorax. So these legs will be straight and won't have a bend in their joints like that of the first two upper pair of legs. But lastly, we can also make sure that each leg does have two main sections to it that is divided by a single joint, to suggest that the legs do have movement and mobility in them, as this is obviously a more realistic quality in terms of how an actual dragonfly's legs are formed. A dragonfly tends to have like a femur section and then an upper section in the leg, so we do want to just make sure that the legs do have a joint in the center at some points in each leg. Now we're going to move on to sketching the wings. We'll start with the upper or forewings first, which can be drawn with our pencils. The shape of the wings could be seen as a spear-headed shape that sprouts from the sides of the thorax in a horizontal fashion. They should be around the same length as the full body of the dragonfly, so the wings tend to be quite large, and obviously in terms of what actually makes sense in terms of physics and how the wings can actually carry the dragonfly's body, they obviously need to be quite large. So that's another thing just to bear in mind when you're trying to form wings of a creature, you know, how large they should be in relation to the creature's body. Now, as we continue, the bottom or hind legs will fall suit and be the same shape. However, they will sprout from the slightly lower part of the thorax. So both set of wings will have the spear-headed shape and slightly point upward rather than point downward. You want the wings to slightly arc upward, which is very unique to the kind of formation of the dragonfly wing. When drawing the vein or the web pattern within the wings, we don't need to worry about symmetry. So the wing's vein pattern will sprout from the inside section of the wing that connects to the body. So you do want to make sure that those veins kind of sprout from the body itself and then disperse within the wings throughout towards the edges of the wings. Now they will start as thick lines that will get thinner and more faint as they move throughout the wings. These lines can be quite chaotic in the way that they disperse through the structure of the wings. However, we want to make sure that there is thicker lines near the thorax and thinner lines near the bottom of the wings. As we continue with this process of adding in these lines, we do want to make sure that the top line or the ridge of each wing should also be thicker and darker than that of the bottom line or the ridge of each wing. So you can play around with how you allow the lines to disperse within each wing. Try to remember that the line structure can be sporadic and have an inconsistency that looks similar to branches on a tree. So we kind of want to create this lightning effect in the sense that it's quite harsh, jagged edges within these vein structures that disperse throughout the wings. However, as long as the thicker lines remain near the thorax and then they become slightly thinner as they disperse throughout the wings, we kind of will see that it creates a more realistic quality in terms of the unique aesthetic that is associated with a dragonfly wing structure. Now, you want to take your time with the wings. This is because you don't want the wings to look symmetrical. However, you want to make sure that they follow the form of the wing's spear-headed shape in a horizontal direction. So naturally, because the wings are moving in this horizontal direction, you want those lines to kind of disperse and their movements kind of follow the same shape of the actual horizontal wing structure. You also don't need to add too many lines within the wings, as this can overcrowd the feature and it won't necessarily look good. Again, a good suggestion would be to look at an image of a dragonfly on the internet and just get some idea of an accurate depiction or aesthetic in terms of how these unique features actually look on a real dragonfly. Now, once we have done that, we're going to move on to kind of shading and working in some darker details with a darker medium. In this particular case, we're going to use ballpoint pen. The reason we use ballpoint pen is it's because it's a medium that works very similar to pencil and it works really well with pencil. And that is because the ink comes out quite sparingly, so we have a lot of agency over our mark making process. Now, dragonflies are predominantly black in their color, and a ballpoint pen is a great way to add shading whilst keeping a dark vivid tonal value in the insect. So we can start near the eyes and the upper thorax. We can make the eyes predominantly black with hints of white to suggest a reflection off of the glassy surface of the eye. And as we move through the thorax, we can color around the pattern within the body. So where we can make some areas in the thorax darker and other areas slightly lighter, we do want to obviously maintain that quality. We want to make sure we leave the patterns on the thorax unshaded, although we can add small stippling qualities, maybe just to suggest texture within that very specific feature. But the legs, you can color them in with your ballpoint pen. But that being said, again, we do want to leave some negative moments within the leg as well, or moments of white, and this will give the legs a little bit more of a three-dimensional quality, as it will suggest, again, a reflection off of that very hard and glassy exoskeleton structure. So around the thorax, you can add these little lines to give the dragonfly a furry quality as well, and that's also a very small and overlooked detail that can just enhance the realistic nature of your dragonfly drawing a little further. As we move down the body structure, we can make it predominantly black with our ballpoint pens. That being said, we want to make sure that as we go through the thorax and the cerci, we leave the patterns untouched. We want to leave them white for adding color to them later on in the tutorial. Dragonflies are predominantly black, so you can simply color the whole cerci or tail structure black. You want to make sure your color around the patterns remain kind of clear, so make sure that you just leave those patterns distinctly white and make sure that you take your time working around them. This way, obviously, we don't color over the areas or darken the areas that we'd like to color in later. Again, consider the cerci or the tail of the dragonflies like a totem statue. You want to make sure that the patterns are all symmetrical and left untouched with your ballpoint pen. You can add in little stipple marks, however you just don't want to color them in or shade them in completely. We're going to move on then to filling in the wings with some ballpoint pen marks. So with the wings, the process is a little simpler because we have already drawn all the lines with our pencil. However, this time we'll simply go over all those lines with our pens. So we want to darken and thicken the lines near the thorax once again and along the top of the wings. We just want the lines to be thicker near the thorax, as this suggests that the exoskeleton or the skeletal structure or the vein structure is attached to the thorax in a sturdy and firm way that gives the dragonfly drawing again just a more realistic physical quality. And as they disperse through the wings, their structure gets thinner and more faint, so we can play around with making those vein structures lighter as we kind of work our way through the edges or towards the edges of each wing. Again, use your pencil marks to guide your process of pen marks and as you add pen lines. But as we continue with this process, we want to kind of consider this very unique feature called the pterostigma. So near the top of the wings, at the tip of the spear-headed shape, we can draw a dark block, which is called the pterostigma. So these are iconic features within the wings of a dragonfly and are placed at the top of all 4 wings near the edges of each wing. You simply want to take your time going over these lines you drew with your pencils as well. Try to take your time and be careful. You don't want any unwanted marks drawn in pen. If we draw or make mistakes with our pen, we can't undo them. So just make sure you take your time and take a break if you get tired, and then come back to your drawing. The wings should have a faint and delicate quality, so this means we really want to be gentle with how we define those little lines and vein features within our wings. With your pens, you can also add in a little crossover line suggesting a netting quality within the wings. However, these qualities tend to be very faint. Dragonfly wings have a net-like structure, however it is very faint, so we do want to make sure we're not pressing too hard with our pen. We don't need to draw this perfect, but rather add a few light lines to suggest this quality within the wings. This quality can be added to all the wings, however you want to keep them faint and light once again with your ballpoint pen. This quality will also result in a more realistic, again making sure we're also paying attention to these small features in terms of making our dragonfly more realistic, and by doing this will result in a more realistic dragonfly drawing and gives more texture to the wing. Now we're going to move on to adding in some color. We can now add some color to the dragonfly drawing using simple coloring pencils. In this particular tutorial we're using coloring pencils, but you can use any colored medium you would like. We can do this by selecting 2 colors, as dragonflies are never too colorful but rather have a kind of set of colors that tends to be between 2 or 3, so you can play around with your color choice, and we can then simply color in the patterns that we have left open and untouched. This just gives the image a slightly more realistic quality and suggests a realistic organic feature within the dragonfly that is synonymous with a realistic representation of an actual dragonfly. With dragonfly art, there is often too much color added, but this is just a better and more simple way in terms of adding color in a strategic way to enhance your dragonfly drawing, but ultimately not give it too much color to the point where it actually looks like a colored image. But otherwise, guys, this is the general process of how to draw a dragonfly. Really fun, really simple, and really easy to make realistic once you understand the simple steps in terms of forming your dragonfly. Some key things to think about: number 1, symmetry is really essential in these types of creatures. This is kind of a reoccurring thing with most insects, so trying to keep symmetry and using that vertical line to establish the features of your dragonfly is really essential. The other thing is work out the entire structure of the creature with pencil before working with pen and a colored medium. But beyond that, the rest is up to you. Make sure you look at references and examples of actual dragonflies to get some inspiration, and most importantly, take your time and do not rush. But otherwise, guys, that is the general process. I hope this was helpful. I hope there are some key concepts and ideas you can take and apply into your own work. If you did like this video, please let us know in the comment section. If you are interested in similar or related topics, we love drawing insects and we love making videos about creatures and animals in all sorts, so please do let us know in the comment section below. Please do like the video and subscribe. That helps us to grow the channel and ultimately enables us to keep making more art content and share it with you guys, which we love to do. But otherwise, thanks again for tuning in. That is it from me today. Until next time, cheers.